find it a little bit tricky to explain board game rules on your game night, even if you're good at it, you'd like some tips and tricks on how explaining board game the most efficient way. In this video, I will be joined by Tarrant, the other half of Meeple University, who will give you tips and tricks how to explain board game. And we have special guest Paul Grogan, who will talk about his experience in explaining board games. Coming up. Hi everyone, it's Stella from Meeple University. Welcome back to my weekly Tabletop diary. For those who haven't seen our videos yet, our main mission here is to explain board game rules clearly on YouTube. And on this channel we do a lot of how to play, overview, playthrough and vlog, just like this one, to keep you informed and entertained. So if you're new here, please consider subscribing to this channel if you haven't already done so. Hi Paul, thank you so much for joining us here.
Hi, thanks very much for having me on the show.
How are you? Yeah, so good to have you here.
Yeah, it's Friday morning at the moment, so it's evening your time. And I guess you're just settling down for a nice Friday evening, and I've just got up and had a quick shower and about to start work, so yeah.
No, well, we're going to have to record a few things as well on the weekend, so we're just getting ready for that. So you know how
Cool.
it goes?
Yes.
So first of all, we just want to obviously thank you so much for joining us. And you've been doing this gaming rules channel for how many years?
Well, according to my LinkedIn profile, Gaming Rules started in March 2014, which is the date that I actually created, because Gaming Rules is not just a hobby, this is my company. I formed the company in March 2014, and I was, for the first sort of 6 to 9 months, I was working 2 jobs. So I had my regular full-time job as an IT manager, and then I was doing Gaming Rules on the side. January 2015 is when I left the full-time job, and then I started doing Gaming Rules full-time. So yeah, it's been 4 years officially, but actually almost 5.
It seems that it's a lot longer than that, because before we even started Meeple University, if we are looking for certain video, some board game video to learn, and like, oh, there's Paul Grogan, let's just click that one, because we always been a fan. Your video explanation is so clear, so nice, and with a bit of a dash of humor as well, which is really good.
Just a little bit, which some people don't get the humor. They don't. You know, I remember the video that I did for Keeper. I think it was Keeper. And of course, it's a Euro game and it's fairly dry. And then I said something about a horse in summer, and I said, and who wouldn't want a horse in summer? Well, that's kind of my bit of humour there. And some people was like, oh yeah, very funny. And I'm sure some people didn't even realise it was a joke and just went, why is he talking about horses? And so, yeah, I try to put a little bit in there. But yeah, it's interesting because as you get older, time goes quicker. So for me to sort of say, I've been doing this.
It's really good.
Well, for me to say, I've been doing this 5 years now. 5 years is a long time. It doesn't feel that I've been doing it 5 years. It feels like I've been doing it maybe 2 or 3, but actually no, I've been doing it a lot longer than that. So yeah.
It just time flies when you kind of like you still have fun. You're doing a lot of things, and it's your own business. I believe you just do it like sometimes like from right in the morning until late at night, because you're just so passionate about this.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the. I was warned about this by some friends of mine. If you're going to start your own business and you're going to start working for yourself, and especially if you're going to work from home, there are a number of pitfalls that you need to avoid. And I have fallen into every single one of those pits, and I am still not out of those pits. So yeah, the dividing work and personal time for me, non-existent, right? And I was working at 7 o'clock this morning, and I was working at midnight last night, talking to a client about some future work. It's really bad. Don't ever do that. You know, you need to put definite lines between work life and personal life. But for me, it's all blurred into one, and that's one of my struggles and challenges is somehow trying to get back a bit of my life.
Understand. So, we're probably not as your caliber as yet, but the thing is, I've got me and Tarrant here, so we kind of like split the job, so that makes it a little bit easier for us. Like I'm doing this part and Tarrant's doing that part, is
Yeah.
mainly doing the rules and then thinking about it and scripting and all that. So, but I know it's really hard for just one person, but yet you're doing a really, really great job, and we're
Thank you.
really happy with your results. So moving into that, as we discuss
Yes.
the challenges, we want to talk about the challenges of explaining board games. So
Yep.
there are so many challenges out there. I don't even know where to start. So what's your biggest challenge?
Because I teach games in a variety of forms.
Yeah.
And the advantage that I've got is there's a connection between all of them. So obviously I create the videos. I create the how to play videos on teaching games. But I also am a professional demo person. So in other words, I go to big events and I do demos of games for companies. And that's the part of that job that I really like. I love interacting with people. I love seeing their faces. And I love explaining games to people in person. The approach to that is so completely different from the approach that I take when I'm creating a script for a video. In some ways it's worlds apart, but in other ways there's a lot of connections. But also I'm a rulebook writer and editor. So what am I doing when I am writing a rulebook is I am trying to teach you how to play a game in written form. So everything that I do, the main parts of my job are creating the how to play videos, writing and editing rulebooks, and doing demos of games at events. It's all about teaching, and the varieties of styles that you can use means that so the three different areas that I do mean that I've got a good sort of grounding knowledge over all of them. The challenges are, well, certainly the challenge for me is having to learn so many different games all of the time. I'm going to a convention next week. It's a convention in the UK called HandyCon, and at that convention I am representing 4 different publishers, so not just one. So I've got a gaming rules area, and I am representing 4 different publishers, and I am demoing about 10 different games over that weekend.
It's like a few games at one time. So you just running around on different desks.
Yeah, what I do is I've got 2 or 3 tables. And then what I'll do is I will start everybody off playing a certain game, and I will sit with them for the first 30, 40 minutes to make sure they're okay. Then I will let them carry on while I then go to the next table and I will start another group off. Because I don't want to run, a 3-hour demo of a game where actually once I've taught them how to play, they then play for the remaining 2 hours because I'm sat there doing nothing. But the challenge for me is I've got, and when I take my demo, I take it very seriously. So I'm going to deliver the best demo possible. I want to know every single rule of that game and be able to answer every question. Well, that's 10 games that I've got to have in my head next weekend. But also, today I'm working on the rules video for Key Market, which is in front of me right now. And I'm writing 2 rule books at the moment, which is taking a lot of my brain power. So one of the challenges for me is having all of those games in my head at one time. And most people are not going to have that challenge. So moving away from me for a minute, the challenge that you will find is, first of all, a lot of people get nervous when they're teaching a game because there is a pressure on them because they think, oh, right, everybody's going to expect me to know all of the rules, get every single rule right, and and be good at delivering it. So a lot of people get nervous about it. And obviously, if you're demoing games or if you're teaching games to people that you know, that's much easier than teaching people who you necessarily don't know, who might, So I don't have any advice really on that. If you are nervous about it, then try to take a deep breath, try to relax. But one pointer that I would say is it's okay to look at the rule book. Okay? So I am the main demo person for Czech Games Edition. And when I go to Gen Con and Origins and things like that, I demo all of the Czech games to everybody. And somebody will come up and they'll say, I want to play Dungeon Pets. Well, I know Dungeon Pets. I know Dungeon Pets really well. Do I remember exactly what the 3-player rule is about the green square? No.
No one will.
Is it so? No. So for that point, I will look in the rule book. Now, there is a train of thought that says, wait a minute, you're the official demo person for this game and you're having to look in a rule book. And some people might think that's, wrong. But looking in the rule book for something that's, a very small detail about, the setup instructions. How much money does everybody start with? Oh yeah, it's 4, 5, 5, 6. Right, okay, just little things like that. Don't be afraid to look in the rule book if you need to. It's much better to look in the rule book than, think, I think I know what the rule is, so I'll tell them, and then you end up getting it wrong. So that would be one thing I would say. Definitely keep the rule book handy.
Do you find it's really like also the noise, the people asking questions, would that actually disrupt you a little bit from explaining the rules? I've
demoed games in a very, very noisy convention setting. I managed to try and blank that out. Obviously, if you're struggling to make yourself heard, then it can be a bit of an issue. In terms of managing the expectations of the group, there's the whole topic of mobile phones at the table, okay? And that's a whole other topic for another time. And I can see both sides of it. There is a lot of people who say having your phones at the table is rude, you should turn them off and you should put them down. And then there's another train of thought that there are people who suffer from social anxiety, and there are apps on the phone where they need to just zone out and calm down for a minute. So, but phones, looking at your phone in the middle of a rules explanation, no, I'm sorry, but the rules explanation, the player needs to be able to, the player needs to be paying attention at that point. If they need, if they're suffering from anxiety and they need a minute and they need to go and chill out, that's absolutely fine. The problem is by being distracted during the rules explanation, you will miss certain things. So and the other thing as well about people is that they will be constantly asking questions. Some people, especially if you've kind of scripted the teach. So the teach that I'm going to do of Key Market tonight, I am planning today to script it, not word for word, but I am going to have a series of bullet points, and I am going to have different parts of, right, whereabouts am I going to explain this bit and where am I going to explain that bit? And then you get somebody interrupting, like 2 minutes in, saying, what does this icon do here? Or what does this mean here? And you're like, I'll get to that later on. And this is a thing you've got to be careful about. Some people don't like that. Okay, so some people, if they say, what does this icon do here? If you don't tell them right then what that icon does, they think you're a terrible teacher because they've asked a question and you're not answering it. So some people think that. But when you've spent a whole day planning how you're going to teach this game, and that icon means absolutely nothing right now. And it makes, even if you explain it right now, it makes no sense whatsoever. It's the way that you word it. If you say that icon is relevant in the winter phase, I'll explain it more in the winter phase. If I forget, remind me. So, basically don't pamper to everybody's needs and desires if they want to know exactly what a specific thing means at that specific time. Because it can disrupt the flow, and it can also end up messing up your flow of information. So I believe that there's a right flow of information, and if you start focusing on a specific thing that's going to happen in a specific area of the game, and you start covering that just at the start, it kind of messes up, and that will disrupt. It disrupts the teach basically.
That's really good. A lot of good information there. I think we all can relate to that, especially Tarrant mainly the rule explainer. You can relate to that.
Yeah, I've had, you see the questions about the icons that aren't ready for discussing. You also can see often things are tangentially relevant and people are already forming their strategies in their head, and they're like, all right, I think this is part of my strategy that relates to what you've just explained. Please, can you help me with that? And
there's another thing as well that there's something I like to do when I'm doing my demos, which most people seem to like and some people don't like, is I'll say, right, I've just explained this section of the board here. You see this icon here? Right, well, I'm going to mention that icon later on. So in other words, what people are doing is people are listening to your explanation. They're looking at the part of the board that you're explaining. They've seen the icon. They know that that icon is relevant for this section, but they know that Paul doesn't like being interrupted and ask questions. So they're sitting there thinking, oh, what does that icon do? What does that icon do? And unfortunately, that has then detached their brain from listening. So if you refer to the icon and say, look, there is an icon here in this section. I'll come back to that later on. They go, all right, he's not forgotten about it. I'll forget about it for now because he's going to explain it later on. So it's about trying to keep everybody's focus and attention on the bit of the game that you're actually explaining. So now, one thing I would like to cover is a general approach to teaching games, and this applies pretty much to everything. Is start with the very, very high level, and then come down in the detail.
Agreed.
I like to start the game with the theme. Even though I'm a Eurogamer and I can play a game with no theme whatsoever, Castles of Burgundy, for example, I will still open the game with Castles of Burgundy to say, we're all lords building castles. I don't even know what the theme is because there is no theme in Castles. But, you know, start with the theme of the game and set the scene. And then drill down from there. And then the next bit that I would explain is a very high level game overview and how you win. So you've got to start with the how you win very early on. Even if you just say the player with the most money is going to win. Right. As long as you get that out there right at the start, then everything else fits into context. The next bit that I cover is I then cover the general structure of the game. So Key Market is played over it's played over 2 years, and each year is divided into 4 seasons. So there's going to be 8 seasons in the game, and then at the end of autumn in the second year, that's when we're going to do end game scoring. Okay, so you now know that within each season, players it's divided into 3 phases, and each player is going to take 1 turn in each of those 3 phases. So we start in winter, we do 3 phases, then we go to spring, then we do 3 right. So straight away now you know there's 8 seasons, and each season's divided into 3 phases. So start high, and then drill down.
And then drilling down. I really like that style because that's just put your mind frame towards, okay, what are we aiming for, and then how is it, and then drill down to details.
I mean, it sounds easy, and most people know this already. If you're teaching games, most people know this already. But I'll never forget a friend of mine who, he himself says he's terrible at teaching games. So I'm not saying he's terrible at teaching games. He's saying that he's terrible at teaching games. And he is. So he came round once, and he brought this game, and he'd learnt how to play, and he sat down and he put the game on the table, and he said, right, so on your turn there are 4 different actions you can do. And we're like, what? You know, what hang on, what's the game about? What are we trying to do? And it's because he'd gone into it with an assumption that we knew what the game was, we knew how to win, we knew what we were doing, and he started by telling us, you know, the bottom level detail of here are the 4 different actions you can do on your turn. And as I say, he's said himself he's terrible at teaching games, but that one of the pitfalls that some people get into is they start explaining too much detail early on with you know, before they've covered you know, the basics really.
It doesn't make sense then when you, and then they go back to the basic, and then they just like, you know, my brain doesn't get it as well usually when people explain like, what?
I know, I interrupt people, so.
And there are times where even the basics, I always come back to a game like Gallerist where you can't really even explain the end game condition because it's so complicated. And you just have to say, all right, you just have to say that at the start, the way you were saying before. It's like, I'm not going to tell it. The game will end when one of 3 things happen that I haven't explained yet. I will get back to that. But
and this is another thing.
Come later.
This is another thing I was going to mention. Is when you are sitting down and teaching a game for the first time, you can approach it in different ways, right? So if the people who are coming around tonight and they're going to learn how to play Key Market, I am going to give them pretty much a full teach of the game before we play, okay? And the reason for that is it's going to be filmed, and it's going to be a teach and play through video. And I want people to just be able to watch the teaching part of the video as a self-contained unit. Now, saying that, if there is a specific thing that happens at a certain point in the game later on, I might not mention that maybe until the start of the second turn. I want to get people going with the basic mechanics of the game before I mention it. So, you know, depending on the game, for those people who want to play a game and be absolutely 100% competitive from game 1, you've got to explain all of the rules up front, okay? But there's another style of teaching games, which is let's just play this game as a learning game. And as long as everybody goes into the game knowing that this is a learning game, then you can have absolutely, you can have a completely different approach. And with you mentioned the Gallerist, and any game by Vital Lacerda that I teach to my group, The first time we play it, it's a learning game. The objective of this exercise for the next 3 or 4 hours, by the end of it, you will have learned how to play. Forget being competitive, right? We're all going to try and win, obviously, but forget being competitive. Forget all of the minute details. Just play the game, learn the game, and learn how all of the bits interconnect and move around.
Yeah.
Because then the game goes a lot quicker. If you were to say, right, we're all going to be super competitive from game one, I'm going to read out all of the rules, everybody's going to sit there and analyse all of those rules in their head.
Yeah.
Very few people can actually then turn those rules into a workable strategy without actually seeing how the game plays out first. So another example is the game Asgard. Asgard is an underrated game by What's Your Game. And Asgard has 5 rounds in the game where you're basically influencing the gods, moving things around. It's very clever. But then after the 5 rounds, you go into Ragnarok, and it's like a completely separate game, right? There's this extra bolt-on game at the end, and that's where everything happens, and that's where you score the points, and that's where you win. The first time we played Asgard, we agreed not to even read the rules on that until the end of the 5 rounds. In other words, we played 5 rounds of the game doing stuff without really understanding where it was going to lead to. And some people might think that's a terrible idea. For us, it worked really well. And the reason for that is we felt that understanding how Ragnarok worked without actually understanding how the core game worked, we weren't able to. It was saying things that didn't really make sense at the time. So we agreed to just play through the game and then do Ragnarok. I mean, you could just play for maybe the first 2 rounds and then read the rules for Ragnarok. But for us, it was absolutely fine. We wrote that game off as a learning game. By the end of it, we knew how to play. And then we went into the next game going, now I know what I'm supposed to do. So, that approach works as well.
That's actually put people a little bit more at ease as well. Sometimes me and Tarrant, when we learn new games, rather than being too competitive, we couple, we play a lot of games together, and rather than doing that, it's, let's just do a play around game. So we're just like, whatever, we just learn as we go, and then that's just definitely that's a different style of learning. That's really good.
There are some people who even will set a game up and play a couple of rounds to see how it goes, make all of their mistakes in the first 2 rounds, and then put it away and then start again. I've never done that. We always just carry on and deal with it and just go, you made some critical mistakes on the first few rounds of the game. Whatever, it doesn't matter. As I say, it's the mentality of we're going into this as a learning game, especially for your really heavy games, and then we'll write it off, and then the next game we'll move on from there. So
that's absolutely right. So that's like different style of game, and it's just like there's just so many things that could go wrong, but so many things, as long as you basically enjoy the game, and as you say, all those tips actually work for us as well. Any other challenges that you have usually when explaining board games?
I think going into it with the plan of how you mentioned it before, what is the most logical flow to go through the game, and there's not always one answer.
Nope. Depends on the game.
Sometimes me and Tarrant, when we film things, we kind of like, I think this is more logical, and Tarrant no, I want to explain this. Like, no! It's just a different way of what's logical for me and what's logical for him, I guess, and we just like meet in the middle. Yeah,
I think our biggest difference, it often comes when you've got a game with a map and there's map placement rules that cover everything.
Okay.
And it's a question of, can you explain those map rules in an abstract way without knowing the actions that lead to them?
Okay.
And then the actions fit in, or do you explain the actions first and come back and talk about the map?
I think probably do the action first, like in big details, and then go to it's like game flow. Game flow is, I think, very important. I think you agree at that on that point.
Yeah, definitely.
See? So we've got a couple of questions as well. But you pretty much, I've got a list of questions, so you pretty much answer a few of them. Maybe if you have a particular game that you feel a bit hard to teach and how you handle it, but you pretty much have covered it already.
Well, no, there is. So if we talk about Through the Ages, okay, Through the Ages is one of my favourite games of all time. I've been playing it for the last 11 years.
We watch your video as well there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super complex.
Yep.
So I have an approach to teaching through the ages. Now, bearing in mind, I do demos of games at conventions. And when you are at a convention, you don't want to sit down. Well, I'm going to assume you don't want to sit down and listen to an hour and a quarter of rules explanation just to see the game being played. Okay?
Yeah.
So I have an approach which I developed a few years ago, which is called the Gaming Rules Interactive Drip Feed Method for Teaching Games at Conventions by Paul Grogan. It's a bit long. I'm trying to find a shorter name for it. But basically, I can get you playing through the ages within 1 minute. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Wow. 1 minute.
Because we're going to sit down and I am going to teach you how to play through the ages. I'm going to teach you how to play by actually doing, this is a demo game. We're not going to play a full game. We're going to play it for a couple of hours. And by the end of this demo, you will know how to play the game, but you will know how to play it by the process of actually doing it. And there we go. Now, at a convention, that works. That method does not normally work when you sit down with your regular gaming group, okay?
Yeah.
Your regular gaming groups generally want to know all the rules in up front. And that's okay.
Very comparative,
But through the ages, even if you came round to my house, or if a group of friends came round to my house tonight and said, Paul, we want to learn through the ages, I would use this method for teaching through the ages. Because I feel it's the best method for an introduction to the game and getting started with the game, rather than listening to an hour's worth of rules. And as I say, you're probably not going to play a full game unless you start on a Saturday morning or something like that. So I found basically that years ago, teaching games like that was a challenge for me, which is why I came, and because I was teaching these games at conventions, and because I've been going to conventions myself, I came up with this method and I've been working on this method. I've now used this method many times over the last 4 or 5 years, so I'm very comfortable with it now, and I now love teaching through the ages with this method. As do, the amount of positive feedback I've had from people that have sat down and had one of my demos, not just of that, but of other games that I've used the method on as well. It definitely does work, certainly in a convention environment, but for teaching that particular game at home, round at my house, I would use exactly the same method. Wow. So it can be quite challenging, but bearing in mind, I know through the ages, like the back of my hand. I've been playing it for 11 years. I helped develop the new version. So I know that game probably better than any other heavy game that I've got. And I make it look easy. So when I'm running the demo, it might just seem, oh yeah, Paul's just running the demo. But actually, there's a huge amount of stuff going on in my head at the time, because I know exactly where we're going and I know exactly what's happening. And although players will have the choices of which cards they pick up and what they want to do, I will be going round and I will be looking at the cards in their hand and I'll be going, right, that player's got this card. Right, at this point I will now... So this is why it's an interactive demo. It's not a completely scripted demo because it depends on what the players do. But because I know the game so well, I'm able to react to whatever they do and, change accordingly. But that requires an absolutely expert knowledge of the game, and I can't do that for most of the games in my collection. There's only a few that I can do that for.
So. You can probably you know exactly what's going to happen, what people's going to do, and then you just slowly release the informations and
it's the thing is
cards, so many.
I also have fun with it as well. So because it's a demo, everybody knows from the start it's a demo. Everybody knows that they're just going to play it and they'll see what happens. And if you, Tarrant, for example, were to, you were to build up your military units because you drafted Caesar at the start of the game, and then you decide to build up some more military units, and then you're like, right, so I've got these infantrymen now, and I've got a military strength of 7, and Stella, your military strength is like 1.
Yeah. Oh no.
Then I might go round, and before your next turn, I might just change the cards in your hand so that you've got an aggression card. Just for the purposes of, and people see I'm doing it. I'm not even secret about it. I'm literally in the front of everybody. I take your cards and I look through them, and then I look through the deck and I give you another card, and everybody goes, what's he doing? And I'm like, and I'm doing it. I'm doing it to facilitate the demo. But what it's done although it's provided a little bit of fun and amusement, what it's done is he's actually taught the concept of, okay, you've got 7 strength and you've only got 1 strength. That 7 strength is useless to you unless you happen to have these aggression cards.
Yeah.
And I've done that, and then what happens is, you play an aggression. Oh, it's very lucky you had one of them in your hand. Oh yeah, you know, and then we resolve it. And I've done this many, many times. And the person who was attacked, it might be thinking, wait a minute, this is unfair. You've just given him a card that has helped him attack me. Again, it's a demo.
Yeah. Yes.
It doesn't really matter. We're going to stop the game in half an hour anyway.
Yeah.
We're all here to just see how everything works. So yeah, depending on the game. I mean, I remember watching somebody. I was at a convention and I was teaching a game on one table, and on the next table, some people sat down to learn how to play Lisboa. Okay.
Yep.
And to be fair, the guy who was teaching them Lisboa was there, and he was teaching 20 other games that weekend. So although he knew the rules of it, he wasn't really experienced with the rules of it. And he sat there and he did the best job he could, and he spent 40 minutes talking to them about the rules of Lisboa. Okay? I looked across and I saw the looks on their faces, and then when I'd finished my demo, I popped over and I said, guys, I'm about to take a lunch break, but I do know this game really well. Do you want any help getting started? And they said, yeah, we'd love some. I said, how much do you know from the teach that you've had? Bearing in mind it was a 40-minute teach. And they said, absolutely nothing. They hadn't taken anything in. And I was like, wow. And that's the thing, you know, convention environment, busy environment, 40 minutes of throwing rules at you without even moving a piece on the board. Some people can get that. Geniuses, right? Most people can't. So I said, right, forget that. I've got a new approach to this. Here you go. Here's the theme. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's how you win. Here's the structure of the game. Right, it's your go. Pick one of your 5 cards and play it, and then I'll tell you what happens. And they were like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I could spend 30 minutes going through all of the 8 different actions, or just play a card. We'll do what it does.
Yeah.
And then if at the end of that you go, oh, well, I wouldn't have done that, fine, take it back. But, you know, allow people to, definitely allow take-backs in teaching games. Allow people to play cards, do things, then explain what happens when they've done that thing. And then if they go, oh, cool, I'm happy with that, great. But if they go, wait a minute, you were encouraging me to attack him, and I've now just lost all of my armies. Yeah, right, so let's undo that. Now we know what happens in that situation. Right, now everybody has learnt, and they've seen it happening, and they've seen, right, now we know what happens if that happens. Right, undo that. Right, of course I wouldn't have done that. So, it's, as I say, there's so many different methods of teaching games, and I'm sure some people watching this video are thinking, oh my God, I would hate to get a demo from Paul. But, you know, it's different methods work for different people.
No, it's a demo. That's the point of it. It's a demo. So, and you clarify that right at the start so they can't
right at the start.
So they know it's just like a play-friendly game.
I mean, you know, there are lines that you don't cross, right? You don't get to round 7 of sulking and then say, oh, by the way, you all need to feed your people.
No, cards are so hard.
No, you don't do that, right? So I know I'm saying don't teach all of the rules up front, but I'm not saying leave absolutely crucial rules, because then all you're going to do is you're going to have bad feeling at the table and be like, well, why didn't you tell us that? So with sulking, I will say right at the start of the game's divided into 4 quarters, and at the end of each quarter, you will have to feed your people, okay? Then, when we're on round 3, probably, maybe 3 or 4, I will remind everybody, don't forget, in 4 rounds' time, you're all going to have to feed your people. Because by then, half of the people have forgotten. So little reminders of the important things before they're coming up is always, you know, it just makes people a bit more at ease.
I think Tarrant made a t-shirt out of that. Out of Tolkien corn unable to feed these people.
For a while there, I used to get very frustrated by games where I had to feed any of my workers. So it's just a, it's like a zookeeper's sign. It says, please do not feed the meeples. And giving some Salkin corn and some Stone Age food to some meeples.
Oh God, that's a good game. But I know, definitely do not want to like leave that thing out. People will get angry. And I remember as well, this is no one's fault. This is me. Like, forgetting rules is probably my thing. I do it quite often, and it's good to, like, occasionally, okay, by the way, like in Anachrony, for example, you have to ascend, you have to do this, and then I missed it. So I lost a lot of points because I forgot to do one vital thing just right before the end. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the timing of having that one suit left to evacuate.
Yeah, like I did not evacuate. So I know one thing that I want to ask you. So you have, this is a little bit different. So you have a story about microphone.
Yes. Yeah. So when I first started, I didn't have any lighting equipment. Okay. Now I've got a studio at home with proper lighting. When I started, I didn't have any lighting equipment whatsoever. Yeah. But we do have a tropical fish tank. Okay. And that tropical fish tank, right? It has 2 fluorescent tubes at the top. Right. Yeah. So what I did is I took the fluorescent tubes out, and I had 2 old speaker stands, because I used to be in a band. So I had 2 old speaker stands, and I'd attached the fluorescent lights to the top of the. Now looking back, this was stupid, because the amount of time and effort. Well, yeah, but the amount of hassle I went through to have to disconnect them, move them, and and at one point I did drop them and they broke, and So anyway, that was the lighting equipment that I used. Now, going back to microphones, I used to use a lapel mic that I bought, and it had a little compartment where it had a battery that you had to put in it, and then it would attach to my camera. So I would have it running down underneath me, underneath the table, and into the camera. Okay, I don't do that now. I now record on a lapel mic, and I'm actually recording on an app on my iPad. So I now record it separately. But back in the day, 4 years ago, I had this little powered lapel mic, little cable running underneath the table and into the camera itself. Now, as most people will know, when you're doing that, you cannot have the camera connected to the mains. Because if you do, you'll get all of the static and all of the interference. So that meant, so that meant I had to use the camera when it was unplugged from the mains, which means you're restricted on your battery life. Okay, that's one thing. However, I was getting some very unusual static on all of my microphone recordings, right? And bearing in mind, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was having to teach myself, and I was having to learn everything myself, and I didn't know what was going on. But I was getting a lot of static interference, and it wasn't from the camera because the camera wasn't plugged in. It turns out it was from the fluorescent lights. So don't ever use fluorescent lights with a powered microphone. But here's the thing. I managed to remove the static. And the way that I did it was the little clip that attaches to your belt that housed the battery. It was like a little metal compartment that you unscrewed, you put the battery in, and then you screwed it back up, okay? What I used to do was, there was a bit of metal on it, which was the clip where you attached it to your belt, okay? So I would lick that clip so that it was nice and wet. I would then insert it not on my belt, but actually between my trousers and my skin, so that it was touching my skin, okay? And the static went away. Now, what I was doing is I was obviously providing some kind of earth. But what I had to, it was quite funny, I had to literally lick it and stick it down my pants. and the static went away. Now, I have told this story at the time to professional sound people, and they didn't believe me. And I'm like, look, it happened. And they said, well, I've never heard of that. But it was a combination of fluorescent lights, a powered lapel mic, an unshielded cable, and it was all of those things combined. But I accidentally fixed it, because what I did, I had some headphones in the camera, and I was listening back to it. I could hear this static, and then suddenly the static would go. I'm like, it's gone. Oh, and then it's come back. Oh, and then it's gone, and it's come back. And I'm like, what's happening? And it was when I was holding the clip. Every time I touched the metal clip, the static went. So I thought, well, I can't hold this on camera because so I'll have to lick it and put it down my trousers. And I did loads of videos like that. So
no one need to know. No one need to know.
No,
it's
no,
behind the camera. And,
this is a story from like 4 years ago that I forgot about, and then your post reminded me of it. So.
Well, that's just being creative, Paul. I think that's really that's what we do. Every time we have new toys, we just have to work around it, and then the static, the whatever it is that comes with it.
There's a lot of trial and error with every new toy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's really good idea. So we'll remember that. So just put it in our pants and then just put a clip there. Oh, that's really good. So have you got any other questions for Paul? We've already taken a lot of his time now.
Yeah.
That's okay.
You'll probably let you get back to script writing, rulebook writing, and video making.
Yeah, well, two rule books that I'm working on today. But as I say, tonight I'm doing a teach and play through video with Key Market. So I'm going to spend this afternoon in basically, not completely writing a word for word script that I normally do for my videos, but just how am I going to approach this teach, bullet point lists, and then I'm going to do the teach tonight, and I am going to film it. But actually, if I'm not happy with the teach, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to tonight is effectively a dry run. But I'm going to film it, and then if it all goes really well, brilliant. I'll keep the filming. If it doesn't, and I don't feel that I did a good enough job, then I won't use this footage, and I will arrange for people to come round another day, and I'll redo it. So cross fingers.
Good approach.
Hopefully it'll go okay.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for the tips.
Yeah, anytime. And if you need any other advice, just give me a shout, and I'm more than happy to help out.
So awesome of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
See ya.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And that's our interview with Paul Grogan from Gaming Rules. We had a lot of great tips for explaining board games, as well as his experience of explaining board game and other things.
And of course, he spoke a lot about different styles of teaching and different objectives of teaching. So he spoke about teaching the whole game up front, teaching as you go along, and sort of throwing your first game out as a learning game. And we reflect on that. Most of what we do at Meeple University is teaching the whole game up front and giving you everything you need so that if you can take all of the information in, you can be competitive at once. And
or just pause the video and then rewind and then watch it later.
Of course. And most of the times that we teach games to play, we're doing the same sort of thing because we have an extensive collection. We play most games not very often, and consequently, we like to have all of the information when we go into our first game. And so, particularly, I know that my experiences with teaching a few of these games is that not only do you have to get the rules out, but in certain games where things will develop and certain scoring options are critical to know at the start of the game, it influences the way that you teach it. Keyflower, for example, I taught that one a couple of months ago now, and almost half of the explanation was in preparing people for the sorts of things that score points, because the mechanics of the game aren't that hard, but if you don't know what's coming and what's going to get you most of your points, then you're not in a competitive position. And Through the Ages, which got a lot of discussion in that interview, was another one where I made sure that we spoke about all of the really nasty or really positive things that could come in Age 3, made sure everyone knew how much culture they might lose if they give up on military and then get beaten in a war, so that everyone could play an 8-hour game and not be surprised at the very end and disappointed by something that they didn't know was coming. So launching off that, I think not only the mechanics, but in certain games, telling everybody what might influence scoring, specific things that might influence scoring, if you are playing a game where you're getting all the information there up front and having everyone ready to play from the first game, is definitely critical. If you don't, otherwise you can certainly have some disappointed people.
I find that you're very good at that. With our game nights, Tarrant usually makes sure he emphasizes on the important things. So, because a lot of time we have a lot of information that we have to remember within the space of half an hour or so. So, in emphasizing on certain things that are really important is probably a good way of teaching it. Now, I know that one challenge that you have while teaching and then playing is having to monitor everyone so that they play correctly, and that sometimes might also influence your own game. Is that correct?
I don't know if it does. It's a useful excuse when I lose a game that I've taught. I'm yet to actually be sure whether it's really why I lose or not.
I find that
I'll keep using the excuse.
Well, I found that if I explain things, sometimes you need some quiet time in between players to think about what you're going to do next. But if you are moderating, explaining the game, there are times where people are asking you questions. Make sure you check everyone's playing the games correctly. So you kind of like loss of that downtime.
It does take a lot of your brain power away to monitor everyone else's turns and then take your own.
Yeah, but yet that's also fulfilling explaining games. So hopefully you'll keep doing that on our games night.
Of course.
Yeah. So hopefully that has been helpful to you. The tips from Paul Grogan and the tips from us and Tarrant in particular. We are thinking of maybe doing a special segment of tips on the teaching board games in particular and what the environment is, and more focus on the details and step by step on the tips how to explain board games. So please write in the comment sections below if you're interested in that segment. So we'll think about it and we might do that. And also if you have any comments, feedback, and you'd like to share your tips in explaining board game, we'd like to hear from you, and you can also put it in the comments and share it with the rest of us. If you like, please hit the like button and share this video around so that your friend can have a look. Maybe you can get some pointers as well about explaining board games. And finally, if you have been enjoying our video, please consider subscribing to our channel. This will help us monetizing our channel and bringing quality contents and better equipment. So until next week.
Farewell.